All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Fascinating show today. We are going to have a story about WikiLeaks. You guys might have already seen some of it, but we might have an interesting debate on the issue. Anna's going to come present that story in a little bit, and her and I might disagree, and perhaps wholeheartedly. That ought to be fascinating. And then there's a question of Jeff Sessions. Is he trying to open up a political investigation of Hillary Clinton? Well, that's not as clear as a lot of people have made that out to be, and that's going to be interesting. Now, come on, aren't you slightly curious who's going to be on the side of WikiLeaks and who's going to be against them? Interesting. That's a little bit later in the program. And then devastating news about John Travolta and more revelations about Roy Moore and what the Republican Party is doing about it. Man, at Moore, you read the stuff that he did, it is just, he's a predator, that's all he is. And a guy who did something similar to Roy Moore, did he get prison time in Alabama? And how much prison time? That is an amazing story. So big show up ahead. But first, I've got exciting announcements about Just Democrats. These are always fun, right? And there's more to come, but let's go do it right now. We have 4 new Justice Democrats, bringing the total to 32. Man, we are not playing around, and these are some excellent candidates. Wait till you get a load of these folks. I want to show you the new slate now. It includes the 2 senatorial candidates, Allison Hartson in California and Paula Jean Swearengin in West Virginia. But the 4 people with the yellow tabs are the new candidates that I'm going to tell you about right now, and you're going to love them. Okay, first of all, if you want to contribute to those 4 new candidates, justdemocrats.com/2strong. And as you're going to see, some of them are going to win. And I love that they're on our team. So let me show you the first one. Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. She is running in New Mexico's 1st district. So what's her story? Well, she was executive director of Enlace Comunitario. That was an anti-domestic violence nonprofit that serves all of central New Mexico, but also does outreach to the Latino community to make sure that they're okay. She served as a law professor at University of New Mexico for over 27 years. But here's the thing, she's gonna win. She's already raised over $330,000. She's a leader in this race. She is a true progressive. She is endorsed by Raul Grijalva and Jamie Raskin, 2 progressive lions in the House of Representatives. The current representative there is Michelle Lujan Grisham, but she's stepping down. So it's an open seat. It's Democrat +7, which means Democrats are very likely to win. So there's no excuse for not having a progressive, strong voice in that seat. Oftentimes, the Democratic Party will make excuses about, but no, we had to make sure it's a purple thing, or we had to make sure that this corporate Democrat won. No, she's the leader in the race. She's got the most money in the race, taking away all excuses. And you guys contribute to her, you volunteer towards her, and you're going to put her over the top, and she's going to win. So we're going to get these people in Congress. This is what change looks like. Just one of the 4. But first, let me just give you her quote, because I loved it. She said, "I am honored to become a Justice Democrat and have their support in our fight to deliver progressive change for the working people of this district. With their help, we will continue to build our campaign's momentum and develop the grassroots movement needed to win in 2018. That is exactly right. So support Lopez. Let's get a real progressive in New Mexico there. So she's the leading candidate, and it would be wonderful if she was in Congress. Remember, Just Democrats are the uncorrupted. No corporate PAC money. Okay, so you can trust her that she's going to do the right thing. She believes in the Just Democratic platform, and she believes that you need to be a strong progressive and not serve the donors. That's why it's your small donor money that makes a difference. Now wait till you get a load on the next guy, James Thompson. So if you don't know about James, he nearly pulled off a miracle in Kansas. He was running against Ron Estes, who's a Republican there. And that seat was a 20-point Republican advantage in the middle of Kansas. So everybody said, "Oh, that's not possible," and it was a special election to replace one of Trump's appointments. And he only had 80 days. He had no name recognition. It's a 20-point lead for the Republicans. He came within 6 points in just a couple of weeks with no name recognition. This time, he's coming loaded for bear. He's got over $907,000 already. He's the leading candidate on the Democratic side. He almost caught the Republican last time. This time, he's going to finish the job because he's now got a year to campaign. People know his name. People are behind him. Our Revolution is supporting him. And now he is a Justice Democrat. Let me read you his quote. I'm honored to join the Justice Democrats. My campaign is focused on the people first policies our party needs to uphold. I know if we stay true to our progressive values, we can elect Democrats across the country. It's exciting to be part of a team that puts people over party. Works to get dark money out of politics and ensures the constitutional rights of every man, woman, and child in America. I will fight like hell to win in 2018, and being part of the Justice Democrats team is a huge boost of momentum to the movement we built here in Kansas. I love it. The uncorrupted get money out of politics. Get the dark money out, get it all out. Get the big donor money out. No corporate PACs. These guys cannot be bought. Okay, so they represent you guys. You are their small donors. You are their voters. You are the guys that they're going to fight for, just like James Thompson said. If we win in Kansas there in a seat that was that heavily Republican, there's no end to where we can win in America. And he's this close, put him over the top, and he could be a congressman and shake up the whole Congress from that area. So go to thejustdemocrats.com overall, check out all their websites. I want you to, and we'll have links to all their websites in the video description box below. And justdemocrats.com/2strong to make sure that you guys, that's also will be in the link down below, to make sure that they have enough small donor money to win. Wait till you get a load of the next guy. This guy's a world beater. His name is Kaniela Ng. He's Hawaii's 1st district. This guy's amazing. He's 28 years old. And wait till you get a load of his history, okay? So he's launched on Monday, he's the first one. This is gonna be an open seat as well. Hawaii is heavily, heavily Democratic. Colleen Hanabusa is running for governor, so that's why it's open. He's the leader in the race, and he is a super strong progressive. Let me show you some of his accomplishments already. He passed same-day voter registration for the first time in Hawaii. How's that, man? There you go. Get people registered, get them to vote. Building Hawaii's first 100% renewable energy high school. I'm gonna remind you, this guy's 28. How did he get all this stuff done? Wait till you hear the story of what he did in his first election. He helped to legalize industrial hemp to phase out big business sugar plantations. He fought to democratize farmers' water access, serving as the youngest chair of the Ocean Marine Resource and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. Unreal. So how did he get in office? He started running when he was 22, but he had no chance because he was in the one state district in Hawaii that was heavily Republican. In fact, it was represented by a Tea Party guy, a Tea Party Republican. And this guy has no money. He worked literally in the pineapple fields growing up, came out of poverty. So native Hawaiian through and through. How did he do it? He literally climbed gates. He knocked on, are you ready for this? 15,000 doors by himself. This time around, you're gonna help him, okay? He's gonna have volunteers, he's gonna have your donations, you guys are gonna do it together. But wait, how did he beat the Tea Party Republican if this is the one Republican area of Hawaii? Not only did he beat him, you wanna see what the score was at the end in the 2012 election? At the age of 23, he got 61%, and George Fontaine got only 35%. That was the incumbent. He crushed the incumbent in a race they said he had no chance of winning. You run as a strong progressive. He ran as the strongest progressive in Hawaii, okay, against a guy who had won the district as a Tea Party Republican. If you run as a strong, uncorrupted progressive, there's no end to what you can accomplish. That's exactly what the Justice Democrats are about. In fact, I love his quote. He said, I'm a Justice Democrat because I believe that when Democrats put people before profits, reject big money corporate corruption, and fight for working families, we win. I was first elected in 2012 at 23 years old by taking on corporate establishment in both parties. I personally knocked on 15,000 doors and won by a landslide despite being grossly outspent. By the way, I should pause here to tell you, you know how much he was outspent? 10-1. His opponent, an incumbent, outspent him 10-1, but he outworked his opponent. He went and knocked on all those doors over and over again, and he won. Man, that's an amazing story, but let me keep going with this quote. He said, "I've been a Justice Democrat before it was even a thing. I have earned establishment-induced battle scars to prove it. Standing together, we will take our progressive values to DC, shake up the establishment, and return the Democratic Party to its progressive roots." What did I tell you guys? You're gonna love these candidates. They don't take any big corporate money. They work for you, and they are warriors. That's exactly what Kaniela Ng is. Last one from today's announcements is Samina Mustafa. She's running in Illinois' 5th district. She has managed Planned Parenthood area clinic on west side of Chicago. She's not running away from Planned Parenthood like some establishment Democrats. She's running towards it. She worked there. She also founded Hand Her the Mic. It's a dedicated to empowering women of color through comedy. And the list goes on and on. Now, in that district, you already have a Democrat. His name is Mike Quigley, but he's against Medicare for all. And he's almost completely inaccessible to his voters. And most of his funding comes from super PACs and corporations. That district is D plus 17. You know what that means? The Democrats have a 17-point advantage there. Why do we have a corporate Democrat who won't even talk to his voters in a district like that? The Republicans would never tolerate it. They'd get somebody that was hard right wing. In our case, the progressive positions, if you look at the justdemocrats.com/platform, you will see that almost all those positions have at least 60% approval in the country. It's not just that they're progressive positions, they're deeply popular positions. So why not have an actual progressive in that race who's uncorrupted, and that's Samina Mustafa. One more time, guys, you're the ones that make this happen. You either make it happen or you don't. They either get your support and they win or they don't. It's all up to you. So justicedemocrats.com/2strong. All the links will be in the description box when we put this up on YouTube and other platforms. You gotta go and show up, and you are the cavalry. And together, we're gonna change this Congress. And I'm telling you right now, we're gonna change this world. This is how you do it. Of course, when we announced the group, they didn't believe. Now we've got 32 incredibly strong Justice Democratic candidates, and more to come. Watch out, establishment. We are coming. All right, can I see the first time we're looking at justdemocrats.com/2strong here? We're trying to raise $24,000 today. Can I see 24,000? We start with 2,648. Can I see 24,000? Look, 24,000 is not much to ask for, okay? But you have no idea how much of a difference that makes to these candidates, because some of them have raised a lot of money, but others are in the $45,000, $50,000 range. So some people will say, "Hey, Cenk, you're taking a side." Goddamn right I am. Okay, so let's go get them. Can I see justdemocrats.com/Allison? Let's see where she's at. She was trying to get to 147,000. You guys know she made it, right? Well, you know, I was in Portugal, so I'm not sure we did talk about it on the show. She made it in time for Monday. We were trying to get it by Monday of last week, and she did it, and now she's up to 177,000. Now she needs a little bit more, because beating Dianne Feinstein in a Senate race in California is a gigantic undertaking. By the way, I can't announce it yet, but we've got new allies in that fight too. They have no idea what's about to hit them. It's gonna be awesome. All right, I'm gonna take a break here. We're gonna come back. Anna's gonna tell you all about WikiLeaks, Donald Trump Jr., Roy Moore. There's so many updates. We'll be right back. Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let me read a couple of quick tweets, and then we got a lot of stories for you. I Am Sock says, well, now I want to run too. How hard would it be to beat Fred Upton? But by the way, guys, we make some real decisions. They're not easy, and some races are harder than you might imagine. So we're trying to make the best calls and pick the best candidates. And I think we got a great bunch. So go out there and support them. The Crazy Atheist says we need just Democrats for Nebraska. Brother, we need just Democrats everywhere. So one thing at a time. We're growing bigger and bigger. We got to make sure that we can manage all this and get those wins home for you guys. And finally, Social Justice Rogue says, Kaniela Ng knocked on 15,000 doors. How's that for bootstraps, Republicans? Well, his opponent, George Fontaine, knows a thing or two about Ng's bootstraps because he whipped him with them. So Kaniela was a regular guy. So you know what he was doing when he was running for the first political office in Hawaii, the state office? He was a personal trainer. He had to get up at 4 in the morning, go and do the personal trainer stuff at the gym, and then leave and go and knock on all those doors.
Yeah.
And he met enough people in that district personally to swing the vote from pro-Republican to a landslide for himself. It's really one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in politics. So those are your Justice Democrats.
Yep.
All right, Casper, what's next?
All right. The Atlantic has unearthed some evidence indicating that Donald Trump Jr. was in direct contact with WikiLeaks during the last presidential election. Now, there are different elements that make this story relevant, especially pertaining to some of the investigations that are ongoing in regard to Russia and potential Russian meddling in this past election. Before we get into the details of the direct messages that they shared with one another, there is some reason to believe that some of the leaked information obtained by WikiLeaks was given to them by the Russian government. Now, that is based on analysis by US intelligence agencies and organizations, but there are skeptics when it comes to that portion of the story. But with that said, I want to give you guys what their communication was and what kind of actions they took, meaning members of the Trump campaign, after they were given certain links and certain information from WikiLeaks.
So before you get started, let me just clarify that I'm among the skeptics, and including in this the importance of this story. All over TV, all over the media. Anna's going to give you the details. Let's give you the facts first, and then discuss whether it is groundbreaking collusion or not.
So first, how do we have knowledge of this correspondence? Well, WikiLeaks made a series of increasingly bold requests, including asking for Trump's tax returns, urging the Trump campaign on election day to reject the results of the election as rigged, and requesting that the president-elect tell Australia to appoint Julian Assange ambassador to the United States. The messages were turned over to Congress as part of the body's various ongoing investigations into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. They were turned over to Congress by Donald Trump Jr. and his lawyer, and they are cooperating with the investigation, so credit where credit is due, but that is where this information is from, and The Atlantic obtained this information and reported on it late yesterday. So here's where it all began. The first message sent to Donald Trump Jr. was September 20th of 2016. And in that message, someone from WikiLeaks, we don't know exactly who it was, essentially let Donald Trump Jr. know about an anti-Trump website. And somehow they managed to get the password to that website and told Donald Trump Jr., you should look into who is behind this website. Donald Trump Jr. actually responded to that and said, I'll ask around, and he did ask around. And so he notified a number of people affiliated with the Trump campaign, including the son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a number of campaign officials, and through that, they forwarded the information to one another. Kellyanne Conway, Steve Bannon, Brad Parscale, and also Jared Kushner, as I mentioned earlier.
I think among these revelations, there is one relevant one. This one is among, in my opinion, completely irrelevant ones. So there's a website, we told you about it and you looked into it. Whoop-de-doo. That you could have found out about the website in 1,000 different ways. The New York Times could have called him and said there's a website, and he could say, I look into it.
Okay, so since Cenk prefaced any and all commentary he's about to give with like what his overall take is, I'll give you my overall take. I disagree with Cenk in regard to this not being a big deal. That portion of what we know, I think, is not that big of a deal. But as we get deeper into the communication that they had, I think it becomes more and more significant and relevant. Not necessarily in regard to potential Russian meddling, but for me, it's more important to do an analysis of whether or not WikiLeaks has a political motive. And I think these communications make it clear that there was a political motive to help the Trump campaign. So let me go on. In July of 2016, on the first day of the Democratic National Convention, WikiLeaks released emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee servers that spring. The email showed DNC officials denigrating Bernie Sanders, renewing tensions on the eve of Clinton's acceptance of the nomination. So that's fine, that was included in the report. Less than an hour after the Washington Post released the Access Hollywood tape in which Trump bragged about sexually assaulting women, WikiLeaks released emails that hackers had found from the personal email, or stolen from the personal email account of Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. So they're setting the stage to show that already it seemed as though there was a political motive, and then when you look at the private messages that Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks had with one another, it further reinforces that notion. On October 3rd of 2016, go ahead,
Sorry, I want to be clear. I think that WikiLeaks was on Trump's side, and I think the fact that they published some of the emails right after the Access Hollywood tapes is decent evidence of that. And there's a lot of evidence of it, including one damning part that we're going to get to in a second. So I'm not disputing that. On the other hand, who's talking about the stolen Hollywood Access tapes? And where did the Washington Post get them? And who wanted to interfere with our elections and gave those stolen tapes to the Washington Post?
I don't think there was ever a question that a foreign government obtained those tapes and then leaked them in an effort to meddle in the election.
But look at the framing, Anna.
There's a difference.
Look at the
framing
there. Yeah, look at the framing though. The emails are always referred to as stolen. The Pentagon Papers are not referred to as stolen, but you can make an argument. The Hollywood Access tapes are not referred to as stolen ever by the media. But where'd they get them from? And who got them? Did they have permission from whoever the owner of Hollywood Access is, whichever giant company? No, they took them without permission. There's another word for that, stolen. So it's just a matter of how you want to frame it. If you give it to the Washington Post, well, that's awesome because they're a media organization. You give it to WikiLeaks, we don't like them. They're mean. They're the bad guys.
Yeah. So there is obviously mainstream media bias against WikiLeaks. I think that's well known. But I want you guys to just focus on what WikiLeaks is transparent about when they are messaging Donald Trump Jr. because they're very clear about what their intentions are. So regardless of media bias doesn't play a role in these direct communications. So keep that in mind. So on October 3rd of 2016, WikiLeaks wrote again, hiya. It'd be great if you guys could comment on or push this story, WikiLeaks suggested, attaching a quote from then Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton about wanting to just drone WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Donald Trump Jr. did respond to that, and he said already did that earlier today. It's amazing what she can get away with.
Now, look, I can't stand the Trumps. I worked super hard to make sure they didn't win. I am very clear with my perspective. There is nothing wrong with what Donald Trump Jr. said there. In fact, it is absolutely outrageous that the rest of the press gave Hillary Clinton a pass for wanting to murder what could be considered, I think somewhat correctly and accurately so by Anna, as she pointed out earlier, a political opponent. So even if you grant WikiLeaks is an opponent of hers, she wanted to murder a political opponent. If Trump had said it, the world would have exploded, and you know it. She said it. I don't know, was she joking? She didn't sound like she was joking. She wasn't joking. And even if Trump was joking when he said that, it would have been news 24/7, and it should be, because Trump is abhorrent, and you shouldn't say things like that. What I'm annoyed by is whenever the establishment, Republicans or Democrats do it, they get a total pass.
Yeah. Look, here's my issue with all of this, right? The connection to Russia is not clear enough for me, meaning that, okay, our intelligence organizations say that Russia stole these emails or hacked into these emails. I'm not personally convinced by that because they haven't really shared that evidence with us yet. Just saying that they believe it and they believe it to be true is not good enough for me. But that being said, for me, what this story communicated was WikiLeaks is not some journalistic organization, which by the way, I was supportive of WikiLeaks even after all of this Hillary Clinton stuff came out, because my view of them was they obtain damning, evidence that speaks truth to power, and they leak it. And they're, to say that there are never any political motivations or biases is naive, right? But I did not have proof of how deep the bias was during this past election. And I think that's relevant for people who are looking at an organization as like WikiLeaks, thinking, hey, this is a credible organization that has no political bias. Clearly they did, and there's a lot of evidence here to prove it, which unfortunately we haven't even gotten to yet. So let me get to that.
Hold on, but I gotta wait. I agree and disagree in parts. So the part I agree with you, and I'll go even further, is that even Mike Pompeo, Trump's CIA director, not Obama's, Trump's CIA director, says that he thinks there is a connection between WikiLeaks and Russia. So now you take that for whatever it's worth. So it's a data point, and I do take that seriously. At the same time, almost everybody that works in the US government, both establishment Republicans and Democrats, hate WikiLeaks with a passion. So I'll take it with a big grain of salt. Now on the issue of whether they're credible journalists, that's where I disagree with you. Yes, I think this story does prove that they were clearly on Trump's side. That doesn't mean that they can't be credible. It doesn't mean that the stuff that they leaked isn't true. It was true.
But there's also
and they are still a media organization.
There is also the question of what they refuse to leak or what they refuse to talk about, like the oligarchs, the Russian oligarchs that were implicated in the Panama Papers, and how WikiLeaks, refused to do any type of work on that issue. So I think that this communication, their very clear support of the Trump campaign, coupled with the fact that there were certain things that they refused to leak, draws a picture that concerns me about their credibility. So I'm just putting that out there.
Okay, I understand. Right. And if you want to take it with a grain of salt, that's fine. And in fact, I'll go further and say, look, they hurt their credibility more when they're not honest about their perspective. Because that's, to me, Fox News, that's fine. They're conservatives, we don't like them, and I think they're wrong on each issue, and we debate them. The problem isn't that. The problem is they call themselves fair and balanced, and they're not fair and balanced. That's a joke, and everybody knows it. So I would hope that WikiLeaks wouldn't continue to make the same mistake. Whatever your perspective is, you should be open and honest about it. We're very honest about our perspective, and I don't think, given this story, among others, I agree with Anna that they have not been open about what their perspective is.
So let's give you a little bit more of their communication. So at one point, WikiLeaks sent to Donald Trump Jr., strongly suggest your dad tweets this link if he mentions us. WikiLeaks went on, pointing Trump Jr. to the link WLSearch.tk, which it said would help Trump's followers dig through the trove of stolen documents and find stories. There's many great stories the press are missing, and we're sure some of your followers or follows will find it. By the way, just released Podesta emails part 4. Then, just 15 minutes after that message was sent, Wall Street Journal's Byron Tao pointed out that Donald Trump himself tweeted, very little pickup by the dishonest media of incredible information provided by WikiLeaks, so dishonest rig system.
So in that case, does it show that the Trump campaign is communicating with WikiLeaks? Yes, of course. He didn't randomly do it 15 minutes later. He did it because of that communication with WikiLeaks. But the stuff was public anyway. And have journalists sent out their articles to the people that they wrote about in hopes that they would be shared on social media? Almost every time, every day. So if any other journalist said, hey, here's the article I wrote about you or about someone else and sent it to you, it would be the biggest no big deal of all time. When it happens with WikiLeaks, oh my God, they wanted their link publicized. Of course they wanted their link publicized, so does everyone.
Right, so look, I agree with you on the surface, right? So if it is proven that they did not obtain their information from Russia and there wasn't Russian meddling, then you're absolutely right. WikiLeaks should not be treated any differently than any other media organization. But the concern here is that a foreign government is meddling in our election process. And if that is proven, I think that these types of communications are relevant.
I want to be really clear about this. And I know that it's a tough distinction, but I think it's an important one. If Russia says, hey, I stole these emails, Trump, would you like them? I think that's a giant problem. And I've talked about that in the past many times on the show. That is a real issue and it has legal ramifications and it should be thoroughly investigated, and I'm thrilled that they're investigating them, okay? But Russia or anyone else gets access to information, passes on to someone in the media.
Russia didn't get access to information. They stole and they hacked.
Whatever, Daniel Ellsberg stole the Pentagon Papers and people will find that outrageous, but he got them without permission and gave them to the New York Times. Almost every single leak is without permission given to a member of the media. And we never complain about that. You'd have to arrest 3/4 of Washington if those were all stolen.
You're talking about American whistleblowers or American leakers. We're talking about the influence of a foreign government possibly having an impact on our election. So that's what makes it different, right?
So if Canada somehow got some information and it was super relevant to the American people, should the New York Times print it? My answer is absolutely. And so if you don't agree and you say, no, Canada, Russia, no, New York Times should suppress the information because it came from a foreign government, either one that's friendly to us like Canada or one that's not friendly to us like Russia. Okay, those are all fine points of disagreement. I say they should publish it because the American people have a right to know. I think there was incredibly valuable information in those emails, and I don't think the Russians should have stolen it. I don't think the Trump people should have worked with the Russians. Those are legal issues, okay? But when you give it to a media organization, yes, the media organization has every right to print them.
All right, so let's move on to, by the way, 2 days after they shared that link with Donald Trump Jr., he also tweeted it out. Again, the link that was provided to him by WikiLeaks. Now, moving forward, let's go to graphic 23. On election day, November 8th, 2016. This is when things get interesting. WikiLeaks wrote to Donald Trump Jr., "Hi Don, if your father loses, we think it is much more interesting if he does not concede and spends time challenging the media and other types of rigging that occurred, as he has implied that he might do." So that is, honestly, it riled me up more than I expected it to, because that is going to lead to complete chaos and turmoil in the United States, and you're now pushing for that, right? And you are now undermining and questioning the election process. And by the way, rigging is an interesting word used in this context. The DNC was dirty as hell. There is no denial of that whatsoever, especially on this camp. What they did to undermine Bernie during the primaries was clear, and I do think it's important that the American public was aware of that. So I was fine with those leaks 100%. However, there is no evidence to indicate that votes were changed or that voting machines were hacked into or that votes were tampered with in any way, shape, or form. To me, that is rigging. Manipulating and rigging are two completely different things, and just this constant narrative that was coming out during the election about rigging. There was no rigging. There's no proof of rigging. Manipulation by the DNC in order to undermine Bernie Sanders, absolutely there was evidence of that. But rigging, I mean,
look, let's not get sidetracked here, because now you're going to get me on a warpath on that. Everybody has a different definition of rigging, and so people just keep assuming that the other person has the other definition of rigging. Some people mean rigging means the DNC picked one side and helped that side. That definitely happened, definitely. The DNC chair admitted it. Some other people legitimately think rigging, that word, means actually changing votes. There's not nearly enough evidence. People will say, oh, I got the snapshot on, no, nobody's ever proven that, okay? So I don't want to get sidetracked on that, and that drives me crazy when people make declarative statements about what the word rigging means. Anyway, on this issue, that particular communication with Donald Trump Jr., it is damning. WikiLeaks, by saying you should not concede the election if you lose, and you should challenge it. Number one, it clearly shows that they have a perspective, and it might be fine to have a perspective, but they were pro-Trump. Now it is absolutely clear. And by the way, you could say, hey, if the Democrats wanted to imprison you or do God knows what else to you, and in the case of Hillary Clinton, maybe murder you, you might be pro-Trump too. Okay, but they were pro-Trump. That's fine, but they were pro-Trump. That communication clearly proves it. Okay, and by the way, like I said, it's okay to have a perspective. So they were pro-Trump, but they should be honest about it. And they're not, okay? The second reason why that's damning is, wait, why do you care if the election is already over that he not concede? That sounds like you want an absolute mess. And you don't care if he actually won the election or not. You didn't say if you think you won the election, you shouldn't concede. You said you shouldn't concede no matter what. Which then to me says, oh, God damn it, did you work with the Russians? I mean, is it not just that you got access to emails either through the Russians or somewhere else? It's that you actually worked with them because the Russians want to cause a mess here. That is now absolutely proven. They had the troll farms. Not only did they do all these different things in the election, but outside of the election, years before the election, they would set up Facebook accounts that were seemingly liberal and seemingly conservative. They would try to get us to fight. They were trying to rip us apart. What is a good way to rip us apart? Don't concede the election and say, no matter what happened, I'm gonna fight anyway. Why is WikiLeaks saying that? If all you care about, hey, you got a perspective and you think Donald Trump is wonderful and you want him to win, that's one thing. You want to rip the country apart for what reason? Well, I know the Russians want to rip us apart because that's already on the record in all the different ways that have been proven that they've been trying to do that. So to me, that particular message is actually really damning for WikiLeaks, and it's an absolute shame because they publish really valuable information. And I wish they would just do that. And again, I don't even mind if they went an extra step and had a perspective, but to not be honest about it and then to potentially work with the Russians to try to split us apart, God damn it, why'd you do that? And so it's just, and by the way, that is not conclusive, but it is an important piece of evidence, and denying that it's important is ridiculous. It is important.
I also want to just quickly note that they kept urging Trump to give his tax returns to WikiLeaks so they could essentially, I'm paraphrasing what they said, but control the messaging around his tax returns, because WikiLeaks was under the assumption that it would eventually get leaked anyway, and it would be better if WikiLeaks handled it as opposed to an media organization like MSNBC or the New York Times.
So 90% of that I have no problem with. They're saying, give us your tax returns and we'll publish them. Every single media organization would have done likewise. Maybe they were even tricking Trump, you could argue, and they now, Julian Assange is arguing after the fact that no, I was trying to coerce him into or trick him into giving me the tax returns and I'd publish them. And do other journalists do that? Yes. The only slight issue there is, so they said, so that we can improve the perception of our impartiality and that we wouldn't be perceived, as another quote, perceived as coming from a pro-Trump or pro-Russia source. Well, if behind the scenes you're saying, look, I'm on your side, but I need to appear not to be on your side, well, that is by definition not being an honest actor. So that's a shame.
Yes, and then finally, there's a lot of other stuff, but let's shorten this a little bit. One of the final messages that was sent to Donald Trump Jr. By the way, at some point he just stopped responding to them. And at this point he had stopped responding. Hi Don, hope you've been doing well. In relation to Mr. Assange, Obama, Clinton placed pressure on Sweden, the UK, and Australia, his home country, to illicitly go after Mr. Assange. It would be real easy and helpful for your dad to suggest that Australia appoint Assange ambassador to Washington, DC. So this was, look, my read of it was an attempt to kind of let Assange off on some of the sexual assault or rape allegations that were lodged against him. And so maybe this was a way to get out of it. I don't know, but it was interesting because it seemed as though they wanted something in return for what they were doing.
All right. So Assange wants to get the hell out of the prison that he's been put into by the Western governments. I don't blame him for that. Is this a wacky scheme to do that? Yes, it's particularly wacky. And he knows it, and they say it even in the messages that it's not gonna work, but it's about framing. So, okay, well, all right, you work with the Trump campaign for your own purposes, and I get it, but I wish you'd have been way more transparent about that. The whole point of WikiLeaks is transparency. And I do have a significant problem with that they were not transparent about their motives and who they supported in this campaign. Now, having said that, as I've been saying throughout this piece, 8 out of 10 of these allegations that everybody else in the press is treating as bombshells, the rest of the press does on a daily basis.
Okay. So let's take a break. We have a lot of other news to get to, but later on we will get to Jeff Sessions' hearing with Congress and what he had to say about links to Russia. Brett has a cat. Yeah. I'm moving away from the controversial stuff we were discussing prior to this going live to talking about pussy. Because it's a pussy cat.
Here's the thing, I think that cats are dumber. Everyone thinks that cats are smarter because they found a way to just like not care about you and have a home and food.
Right.
But cats are stupid, they're like children. Like cats, everything they do, it's like, cat, do you want to take a bath right now?
Yeah.
Because you're fucking gross. And they're like babies and like toddlers. We're like, no, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
I just lick it. And you're like, are you sure that's a good idea? Because I think you might get hair caught in your throat. And the cat's like, no, it's fine.
Ugh.
They're stupid. And then like they're just like babies where it's like, I pooped. And then it's like, did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here, it's fine because I bury it. Like they're idiots. They're like children. And then dogs are like husbands in sitcoms.
Why?
Where they're just like, listen, when do we eat? And I love you for that. Also, I'm gonna try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit me.
That's so true. Although Charlie never tries to hump me, always tries to hump Christian. But you know what?
Are you jealous by that?
No, I'm not jealous. I just think it's interesting because I think Charlie might be a gay dog and I love him no matter what.
Hey Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I forgot my email password. What is it?
PASSWORD.
It's John and Hannah on Think Tank.
Welcome back to Think Tank.
It's the anti-social media. Is that what that is?
Shit. Maybe they're in the studio watching it.
Do you like how I dance like Kermit from the Muppets? Like just no.
Love it.
Do you?
No, because this is flipping stupid.
That's going too far. He's going to have the conversation.
No. This is a great think tank. You guys love this video.
Have I told you to check out Think Tank today? YouTube.com/Think Tank.
Been easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
He said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Back on the Young Turks, our members of the day are Michael Lemmy and Connie Van Pinksteren. The members make this show possible, tytnetwork.com/join. Now let me go to a couple of tweets. Matthew Reed says, this is Julian Assange looking out for Julian Assange. I think that is incredibly accurate. Jeff Waldorf says, it's been incredibly clear Assange and WikiLeaks didn't like Hillary Clinton. Establishment Dems did threaten to drone him after all. So I think Jeff is making the point that, look, you're complaining that they're not open about their perspective, but that was fairly clear, Jeff is saying. Daniel Pareja on another note says, so now that tweets can be 280 characters, does that mean Trump's intelligence briefings are twice as long? Good question.
What intelligence briefings?
Right. How's that for an oxymoron? Trump's intelligence briefings. Let me see I'm sorry. Let me see justicedemocrats.com/2strong. See where we are for. No, we're very similar place that we were before. All right, we're trying to reach 24,000 for the 4 new Justice Democrat candidates that were announced early. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. All right. See, 24,000 is not a big goal, but it makes a big difference in those races in Kansas, Hawaii, Illinois, and New Mexico. Let's make that happen. Okay, Anna, what's next?
All right. Some Republican lawmakers and one prominent Fox News host have been badgering Attorney General Jeff Sessions in regard to this supposed Uranium One scandal involving Hillary Clinton, and they want an investigation. And it's interesting because now the Attorney General, or I should say the Justice Department, has released a letter to House Judiciary Committee Chair Robert Goodlatte in regard to a potential investigation, a review for a potential investigation into Hillary Clinton and the Uranium One deal. Now, just to give you a quick context into the Uranium One deal, The Hill had published a report based on a book that was written by a Breitbart editor at large that accused Hillary Clinton of being part of this pay-to-play scheme where she granted, the allegations was that she granted Russia access to uranium in the United States. And every bit of investigation into this so far has proven that this is inaccurate, and I'll get into that later.
I kind of disagree with that.
Okay, well, the evidence shows that it is completely inaccurate and is not backed up by facts whatsoever. There were 9 federal agencies that approved the deal. There's no evidence whatsoever that Hillary Clinton was even aware of it. She didn't even have veto power or unilateral decision-making power when it came to that particular issue. The uranium that Russia was able to obtain through that deal is not allowed to leave the United States. They're able to use it here in the United States. And Russia has more uranium than the United States ever will have. And so, yeah, they already have weapons. Like this notion that, oh, the world has become more unsafe because Hillary Clinton signed on to this Uranium One deal. It's just inaccurate. The facts don't bear that out whatsoever.
Well, look, now, okay. So if you say that, I acknowledge everything you say except for one important distinction, which is the Clinton Foundation did get a lot of money from these same people who helped this deal go through. And Bill Clinton did go and get paid personally hundreds of thousands of dollars in Russia right around the same time. Does that create at least an appearance of a conflict of interest?
Of course it does, yes.
Did Hillary Clinton have potentially have a role to play? Did she unilaterally make the decision? No, Anna's absolutely right. She did not unilaterally make the decision. Do we have any evidence that she wrote a memo saying, hey, I got paid, make sure this deal goes through? No, there's no evidence of that, right? But you have her foundation and her husband getting paid by these guys at the same time that she is part of an approval process that happens to go through. It's a terrible, terrible idea to go get paid at the same time as this deal is going through, because even if you didn't have anything to do with it, it certainly
really
looks like that.
Right.
So there is evidence publicly that they took money and then Hillary Clinton helped to approve the deal. So I think that if you wanted to investigate it back then, I think it would have been a perfectly legitimate investigation and you might have found further evidence. To investigate it now, years later, after they're no longer in power, and because Donald Trump has specifically asked for a political investigation is a completely different story and completely outrageous.
So I just want to be clear about one thing before we move forward, because the burden of proof that we use for Trump and potential Russian collusion is a very high burden of proof, and I believe that's fair. But when it comes to Hillary Clinton, it seems like we don't utilize the same burden of proof. She did not personally approve anything. There's no evidence that she personally approved anything. There isn't even any evidence that she was aware of the deal. Now, I agree with you that money and that corruption is a bad look, and it's a bad look on a number of issues, and I think that's ultimately what led to her losing the election. She's so damn corrupt. But again, to say that she personally played a role in that decision making, we don't have the evidence for that.
And I didn't say that.
What? Well, you said played a role in the decision making.
No, this State Department absolutely positively played a role in that decision. Now, it might be that the Secretary of State was clueless and was not involved in that decision. Or it might be that she was completely involved. No one knows. I mean, so would I have investigated at the time? Goddamn right I would have investigated it. I would have said, wait, your husband just took hundreds of thousands of dollars from the guys who would like to make this deal happen and put it in his pocket, in other words, your pocket. And then they gave money to your foundation on top while you're part of the process that approves this deal. No, I'd like to investigate that and find out if you had a role to play, okay? But this is 6, 7 years later, they're not in office, they lost. So this is nothing but a political scheme by Trump to try to do diversion tactics. So you don't have to worry about the content of that long ago deal. So it's obvious, Trump says in public, it's the saddest thing that I can't interfere with the Justice Department. He, in public just 10 days ago, said that Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department, it's very discouraging that they're not going after Hillary Clinton. So if you think that it's problematic that Hillary Clinton might have been involved in that deal, I agree with you. But then you should be way more worried that Donald Trump is clearly saying, do a political retribution, and I want to interfere with the Justice Department. I'm saying it in public. With Hillary Clinton, you don't have enough evidence. With Trump, he gives you the evidence. He says, do a political investigation of Hillary Clinton because there's a special counsel against me, so I want a special counsel against her.
Yeah,
he admits it.
Yeah, I want a distraction strategy, and here it is. So. And look, it drives me absolutely insane. Hillary's not the president, okay? I don't care about Hillary. Hillary is the most irrelevant person. The only time Hillary is relevant is when she's trying to play a role in US politics again. But right now, she's completely irrelevant. You are the president of the United States. You're accused of collusion with Russia. And in my opinion, more importantly, having some shady financial dealings with Russia that could be playing a role in your policy-making decisions, that could actually undermine our democracy and the best interests of the American people. That matters to me way more than some deal that Hillary Clinton may or may not have known about from years ago. Okay, regarding uranium that never left the United States. All right, so let's talk about what Jeff Sessions is doing. The Attorney General and the Justice Department, yes, it's part of the executive branch. They are not supposed to be influenced by the president, okay? But it appears that he is not only being influenced by the president, he's being influenced by Robert Goodlatte, again, the House Judiciary Committee chair. They want an investigation. And then now, more importantly, Fox News host Jeanine Pirro, whatever her name is, ranting and raving about this Uranium One deal on Fox News because, hey, let's do whatever we can to distract from the fact that we have a crooked person as the president of the United States. Apparently, Jeanine Pirro had met with Trump personally and urged this investigation to happen. If you are unclear of what Pirro's tone is, take a look at this video.
Obama and the Clintons sold us out. Our uranium, and with it, the security of our nation. Follow me. They lied to us. They said there was nothing to worry about, that the sale of 20% of America's uranium to our enemy, Russia, wasn't really a problem. Jeff Sessions needs to immediately release the informant from the non-disclosure agreement. Number 2, Andrew McCabe needs to be fired as number 2 in the FBI. And number 3, Robert Mueller, instead of heading an investigation into determining whether Donald Trump colluded with Russia, should be the target of an investigation for his role in covering up the extortion scheme that allowed Russia to access America's uranium. You wrote a letter to Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein, and I'm furious with Rosenstein. I mean, this guy appoints Mueller when he knows that Mueller was on the Uranium One deal. He knows Mueller's friends with Comey. Rosenstein was on the Uranium One prosecution, the underlying case, and they're dancing with the devil right now. And I'm not even talking about the criminality and money to the Clintons and their so-called charitable foundation that accompanied the sale of our uranium to Russia. Hillary should not get a free pass because she lost an election. Her reign was one of bold, brazen, in-your-face pay-to-play corruption. It's time to stop this psychopath. Why are they dragging their feet? Why are they not demanding that Mueller pull back? What are they afraid of? Attorney General Jeff Sessions must open a new federal criminal investigation into Hillary Rodham Clinton, impanel a grand jury immediately, and void the false Clinton immunity deals. Easily done since each one has been violated.
Oh, God,
Man.
that was like nails to a chalkboard.
Man, how the mighty have fallen. Now we have the President of the United States of America, an office that people used to respect, getting orders from this two-bit clown. She was in the Oval Office, inside the White House, telling Trump to do this investigation. That circus clown. And, I'll tell you what is going on, okay? And she goes, time to stop this psychopath. I assume that she's not talking about herself, but she should be.
Yeah.
Time to stop Hillary Clinton. No, we're past that time. You already stopped her in 2016. So what do you mean? Stop her from doing what? She's walking around in the woods. This has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. One, it's a distraction. Number two, as she said over and over there, well, we have to get Robert Mueller out because he was kind of involved in this thing. You don't know what he was involved or not involved in. In other words, you want to get Robert Mueller out because he's investigating Donald Trump.
Right.
This is an obvious obstruction of justice play. You're doing it right in front of everybody.
I think the person who looks weakest and the most pathetic is Attorney General Jeff Sessions, especially considering the verbal beating that he received by Trump because he recused himself after some of these revelations regarding Russia and the meetings that he had with Kislyak. So now, in response to all of this stuff, Jeff Sessions has directed senior federal prosecutors to evaluate the lawmakers' request for investigations into a number of matters related to Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, the Uranium One sale, and former FBI Director James Comey's leaks about his conversations with President Trump. Now, to be clear, he has not launched an investigation. He is saying that he has directed federal prosecutors to evaluate whether or not an investigation can move forward. And based on the lack of evidence in regard to this Uranium One deal and the lack of evidence reinforcing these conspiracy theories about it, it's unlikely that the investigation is going to happen. They don't have the evidence to move forward with an investigation. Mark my words, you will see that play out the way I just said.
Well, I hope you're right, but so two things about it. I'll tell you who's definitely guilty and who the jury's out on. The Republicans in Congress, every once in a while, there'll be a Jeff Flake and a Bob Corker that comes out and seems to hold Trump accountable. No, it's just words. But the Republicans in Congress just asked the Justice Department to launch a political strike back move and completely taint our Justice Department and not actually seek justice, but turn it into a political witch hunt. So that in the case of Trump, there's actually evidence and they're collecting that evidence. In the case of Hillary, they're almost admitting, yeah, we're trying to do a witch hunt. We're trying to get someone who's not relevant anymore because we care about political strike back. So the Republicans in Congress are the worst. The jury's in on that. They've specifically requested this. Now, as far as Sessions and the Justice Department, that jury's out. This is them saying, okay, we will see if we will do that investigation. So don't conclude yet that Sessions is dirty and is definitely going to do it. If they do the investigation and Sessions does not recuse himself, either one of those things, both of those things, terrible. And then the jury will be in on Sessions. But if they look at it and go, there's nothing to investigate, well then, okay, then they did the right thing. So we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Okay, I think we have to take another break, unfortunately. But when we come back, Jeff Sessions' testimony, and later on in the hour, I really want to get to Hannity's backpedal on Keurig. It's awesome. My favorite story of the day.
I told you.
Come right back.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Now you guys are gonna think, especially my early behind the scenes footage, like I already went and looked at the comments in the member section. You guys, oh, he's high, he's drunk. I swear to you, I'm not. Well, I just tell you if I am, right? And so I get goofy in the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the need for the butter with this pretzel? This is already super fattening it up. You don't need to put butter on this thing. Why'd they make me do it, Bitsy? Why'd they make me do it?
I'm just saying that this is known as the rear end guy. There's no way that every person he knows doesn't call him the rear end guy. I want you guys to see if you could see the lightning bugs. Whoa. Light them up. Light them up.
Is it true, Ritzy? I will now watch it later.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Imagine him, isn't it? Hey, Kiki Cat. Kiki Cat. All right, this is Kiki Cat signing out.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go.
All right, we got a graphic incoming. Putting up 3, 2, 1. All right, video next. And next video. And power panel. And dropping it.
Back on a Young Turks. YouTube Super Chat allows you to talk to us and helps the show. Twitchable wrote there, thanks WikiLeaks. Now the next time you publish something actually important, we're gonna have this argument about your credibility all over again.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah, that's why them kind of picking sides in that election and not being clear about it, it hurt their cause. It hurt the cause of more transparency. That's why I'm bothered by it. Okay, Septian Patterson says about Judge Jeanine Pirro, why is she yelling like Samuel L. Jackson?
She's gonna have like a stroke or a heart attack at some point.
I think she might. Gabby Marita says, since when has a lack of evidence ever caused Republicans to back down from a witch hunt? How many Benghazi hearings were there? 8? Gabby, I think there might have been 9 actually. Ricky Santiago says, did I order cornbread? You're goddamn right. No, I'm kidding. That's a different Santiago. Okay.
What?
That's from A Few Good Men.
Oh.
Anyway, out of all, Ricky says, out of all Cenk Uygur impersonations, his Jeanine Pirro is the most accurate. Why, thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Let's move on. All right, so the House Judiciary Committee was questioning Jeff Sessions, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, as part of its investigation into possible Russian meddling in the 2016 election. And this was an interesting hearing considering some of the information that we now know regarding some campaign volunteers, campaign staffers, and the communications they had with the Russians. So of course, there's the Paul Manafort angle. There's the fact that George Papadopoulos has admitted guilt, although we don't know the full details of what he has and hasn't admitted to. Now, what is Sessions' take on this? Is he changing his story a little bit from previous hearings and the previous testimony that he has given? First, let's take a look at his answers regarding Papadopoulos and Paige Carter.
I would like to address recent news reports regarding meetings during the campaign attended by George Papadopoulos and Carter Page, among others. Frankly, I had no recollection of this meeting until I saw these news reports. I do now recall that the March 2016 meeting at the Trump Hotel that Mr. Papadopoulos attended, but I have no clear recollection of the details of what he said at that meeting. After reading his account, and to the best of my recollection, I believe that I wanted to make clear to him that he was not authorized to represent the campaign with the Russian government or any other foreign government for that matter. But I did not recall this event, which occurred 18 months before my testimony of a few weeks ago. And I would gladly have reported it had I remembered it, because I pushed back against his suggestion that I thought may have been improper. As for Mr. Page, while I do not challenge his recollection, I have no memory of his presence at a dinner at the Capitol Hill Club or any passing conversation he may have had with me as he left the dinner.
So we just showed you a small portion of the hearing, and for those of you who don't have the time to sit and watch the full hearing, I can sum it up for you by letting you know that Jeff Sessions responded to every question pertaining to Russia, because Republicans didn't want to ask about Russia. They asked about a variety of other random things with, I do not recall, I do not recall. He doesn't recall anything. He doesn't recall anything from a year and a half ago. If you can't remember things, significant things from a year and a half ago, I mean, can you remember anything? It was so obvious to me that, and then he would pretend like he didn't understand questions that were incredibly clear, and he didn't want to answer them. So
maybe he's going to go with the Alzheimer's defense too. So look, come on, guys, get a load of the obvious, on its face, absurd argument that Sessions is making. Now he says, I don't recall having a conversation with Papadopoulos. I did not recall having a conversation with Papadopoulos telling him to not put us in touch with the Russians. But now I do recall it, and I was awesome. And I told him, definitely don't have that conversation with the Russians. Wait, you didn't remember it at all before. Now that we discovered that you were in the midst of all these conversations about the Trump campaign talking to the Russians, now that you do recall it, You recall it with great clarity and emphasis, and how you almost yelled at him to not get involved with the Russians.
Yeah, Jeff Sessions is the good guy.
Yeah, now your memory's crystal clear, right? Now, come on. You either remember it or you don't remember it. You can't, what he's trying to do is get credit, not get in trouble because he lied about not remembering things, because he just didn't want to talk about all the Russian connections, because there was a lot of Russian connections, right? Yeah. And he wants to get credit for that and get credit for, now I told him not to go though, and I told him not to put Trump and Putin in. He could get credit for the second thing, if he admitted, yeah, I lied to you guys. Of course I remember that conversation. I'm the one who told him to make sure that Trump and Putin didn't meet up.
Now he explains why it's common for people like him to not recall certain things. Let's listen to his reasoning in the next video.
My answers have not changed. I've always told the truth, and I have answered every question as I understood them to the best of my recollection, as I will continue to do today. All you have been in campaigns, let me just suggest, but most of you have not participated in a presidential campaign, and none of you had a part in the Trump campaign. And it was a brilliant campaign, I think, in many ways, but it was a form of chaos every day from day one. We traveled sometimes to several places in one day. Sleep was in short supply, and I was still a full-time senator with a very full schedule. During this year, I've spent close to 20 hours testifying before Congress. Before today, I have been asked to remember details from a year ago, such as who I saw on what day, in what meeting, and who said what to when. In all of my testimony, I can only do my best to answer your questions as I understand them and to the best of my memory. But I will not accept and reject accusations that I have ever lied. That is a lie. So as I said before, my story has never changed. I've always told the truth, and I've answered every question to the best of my recollection, and I will continue to do so today.
But we know that's not true, because you recused yourself, because you said that you had never met with the Russians when Al Franken asked you about it in your confirmation hearings. Then we found out that you met with the Russians several times. Then you said, well, we didn't talk about policy. Then you admitted that you did talk about policy, and then you recused yourself. So you clearly lied in the beginning about meeting with the Russians.
No, Cenk, he didn't lie. It's just that initially he had no recollection. Now, it's just very, it's a coincidence that I conveniently have no recollection when it doesn't suit me to have any recollection, right? Like, that's the thing that's amazing. Like and that's his strategy, and it's worked so far. He just says he doesn't remember, then he gets called out and he's like, oh yeah, now I remember, but hey, I was so tired and I was a full-time senator, because senators work real hard, right? With all of the staffers that they have reading the legislation for them and briefing them on things. I mean, the senators have gotten a lot done in the US lately.
But
anyway.
To be fair to the Republicans, when Clinton said that he was also tired, and that's why lying under oath was no big deal, the Republicans were like, you're right, you're free to go. So Sessions, if you believe, like the Republicans, that what Clinton did was outrageous, lying under oath about an affair, this is lying under oath about things that involve the government and working with a foreign government to perhaps influence our elections. Way more important. This Sessions should be gone. If not, I am expecting apologies for all Republicans who pursued impeachment, because now they apparently think that perjury is no big deal.
All right, moving on to Roy Moore. Lots of updates to that story, and I want to make sure you guys don't miss out on that. Several Alabama residents have spoken to the press about how Roy Moore, who is the Senate candidate, Republican Senate candidate in Alabama, was known to go after young teen girls, and it was just this open secret that no one did anything about. In fact, he moved up the ranks in his law career while this open secret was out in the open. And so I want to give you some of the direct quotes from these Alabama residents. Keep in mind, these are people in Alabama. These are not members of the DNC. These are not liberal individuals trying to undermine him. These are people who lived in his communities and were very familiar with him. So One individual says that these stories have been going around this town for 30 years. Blake Usry, who grew up in Gadsden and lives there currently, told AL.com, excuse me. He said that nobody could believe they hadn't come out yet because they're from 30 years ago. It's been going on for a long time. Another individual says him liking and dating young girls was never a secret. When we all were in high school, in our neighborhoods up by Nakulala Falls, we heard it all the time. Even people at the courthouse knew it was a well-known secret. Another person said he watched us girls quite openly. His eyes crawled over our shirts and our backsides. He was so open about it that I would try and handle his order as quickly as possible.
Now, the Victoria that had that quote there, Beverstock, is the only one in these stories that's actually above the age of 18. So she was 20 at the time when Roy Moore was checking her out. So that's fine. I mean, depends on your definition of fine, but certainly nothing illegal or for a guy in his 30s to check out a 20-year-old's okay. But point being is that everybody in that town, everybody in the restaurant he went to knew that he checked out all the young girls, including the ones all the way down to 15. The girl that said he tried to rape her in the back of the old Hickory restaurant was 15 when he started hitting on her, and then he wrote in her yearbook when she was 16. So, and it goes on, and then you've got the mall, where apparently he was banned from the mall because he was known as a pervert who was trying to pick up young girls at the mall, and the off-duty police officers knew it, the people who worked at the mall knew it, everybody in the community knew it. Roy Moore was the pervert. And now, by the way, you see all this, and it becomes clear why Roy Moore is a moral crusader. Because he's crusading against himself. He knows that he has bad intent, and so what does he do? He does projection, and he goes, "Oh, the sinners, the sinners."
It's a way of deflecting and making sure that you overcompensate in some ways to prevent people from investigating your own behavior. Look at that guy. Look at these people. They're the immoral ones. Meanwhile, it's out in the open that he's out there going after teenage girls and making them uncomfortable, and in some of the allegations, literally sexually assaulting them by allegedly grabbing one of these women, girls at the time, by the neck and forcing her head toward her crotch. Toward his crotch. Now, the reason why I'm giving you more context into what people apparently openly knew about Roy Moore is because the response to Roy Moore has been interesting to say the least, especially when you compare it to other individuals who had been found guilty or pleaded guilty to similar predatory behavior and how they actually spent time in prison for doing so. But when it comes to the case of Roy Moore, oh, it's out in the open and he doesn't face any part of our criminal justice system. So the RNC has now decided that they will not raise money for Roy Moore. They are not supportive of him whatsoever. On a national level, lawmakers are not supportive of him whatsoever. Now, on a more local level, though, in Alabama, that's where lawmakers could have a real impact because they could make a decision as to whether or not Roy Moore can move forward with this run for the Senate seat. And so the 21 members of Alabama's Republican Party Central Steering Committee again, are the only ones who can pull Roy Moore's nomination and potentially block his path to the Senate after days of mounting allegations that their Senate nominee had sexual contact with teenage girls while he was in his 30s. Two Alabama GOP sources tell Talking Points memo, they finally decided to hold a meeting later this week to hash out whether they can stand by his side. So they haven't even made that decision yet. They need to have a meeting to decide whether or not they're going to take action. And some of these politicians are hesitant to do so because Roy Moore still has his backers in Alabama. And since nearly a quarter of them are seeking re-election, they're worried about losing that portion of the constituency and that portion of the vote.
They're very unlikely to do anything. Alabama Republican Party Chairwoman Terry Lathan said, quote, very unlikely that Moore would lose party's endorsement. And in the entirety of the article and the discussions with these politicians in Alabama, the focus was what will the steering committee do because of the potential blowback to their careers? There was almost no discussion of, hey, this guy tried to rape a 16-year-old girl in a parking lot and nearly kidnapped a 14-year-old and then fondled her and all the different things that he did. That's not relevant. The relevant thing is, how is it going to affect other Alabama Republicans?
That's
and
right.
how is it going to affect minorities?
About. It's amazing.
And you wonder why people hate politicians, okay? This is why they hate politicians. Because isn't there somebody who's going to stand up in the meeting and go, guys, what if it was your 14-year-old daughter that he brought into the woods? And he did. He brought her, he took her from her mom, the 14-year-old, drove her 30 minutes into the woods so that he could have her alone and strip her down to her underwear and make her touch his crotch after getting naked. He tricked the mom by saying that he was going to take care of her and he didn't want her to hear the painful custody hearings. And he said, it's okay, I'm the district attorney. Is no one going to stand up and say, what if it was your 14-year-old daughter that he took into the woods? No, hey, Bob, what do you think about your political career? Hey, Sally, what do you think about your political career? Let's have a conversation about our political careers. And by the way, the only reason why they're having that conversation about their political careers is not just because they're the only bad guys in Alabama, no. Because they're worried that Republican voters in Alabama are deeply immoral and they don't care about child molestation. And if they vote against Roy Moore and take him out of that position, that the Republican voters in Alabama will stand with the child molester and then do political retribution on anyone who removed him.
Yeah, that's what they think. And I don't know how much truth there is behind that. I'm curious to see, if some of these politicians actually have a spine and they speak out against Roy Moore and they, just condemn him, if it actually does negatively impact their campaign for re-election. But look, there are two things that you said that concern me, not because you said it, but because it's so true in terms of the way that we handle these types of cases, right? The first issue is, putting your political career, I'm talking about these lawmakers, above actual, moral and ethical issues. Like, we're talking about Alabama lawmakers who are very much to the right, who are part of this red state that believe in family values, and I'm sure that some of those lawmakers probably had some strong feelings about transgender individuals being able to use the bathrooms that they identify with, and I'm sure that they believed and pushed this notion that they would sexually assault women in their bathrooms, and like, oh, they're so concerned about sexual assault. You have someone who has been accused of sexual assault by Republican women, by the way. The latest accusation was from a woman who supported Trump, so there is no political motive there. And yet, no, we got to worry about our own political careers. It's so pathetic. Have a spine. You're supposed to be in a leadership position. You should be a leader. You're supposed to protect your country, your constituents, and they're doing the exact opposite of that. The second thing I forgot, so I'll remember and I'll come back to it.
All right, so hold on. Are you going to do Joseph Lee Musso? Because I
am, because I think that's an important, story to juxtapose, Roy Moore to average Americans and what they deal with. So, Roy Moore so far is not facing a criminal investigation regarding the accusations that he was sexually assaulting teenage girls when he was in his 30s. However, there are cases of men in the state of Alabama who have been prosecuted for predatory behavior. And one of those individuals is Joseph Lee Musso, who spent nearly 5 years in prison on the charge of using a computer to attempt to persuade, induce, and entice a child to engage in sexual activity. Now, the individual that Musso was communicating with online was not, in fact, a 14-year-old, but an undercover cop. And so he planned to meet who he thought was a 14-year-old girl. And then when he showed up, it was an undercover cop, and he faced this criminal charge. Now, in March of 2005, Musso pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence of 63 months. He served 1 month short of 5 years as a federal inmate. He did what most sex offenders have to do. He registered as a sex offender, and that has had very negative impacts on his life. He's not able to get a job. His record says that his victim was a 14-year-old girl, even though there wasn't really a victim in that case. But nonetheless, I mean, he is a bad guy. His intention was to meet with a 14-year-old girl and have a sexual encounter with her. And so the justice system dealt with that the way that it should. But with Roy Moore, oh, he's a man in a position of power, so who cares? And he's a defiant person who refuses to ever take ownership or ever apologize. And since we live in this society now where apologies are looked upon as weaknesses, we're gonna give Roy Moore a pass.
So now let's look at, we just told you about Joseph Lee Musso. Let's look at the full record of Roy Moore real quick. Number one, he admits that he liked to date young girls as young as 16 when he was in his 30s. That part he admits. Everybody in town, the reporters go talk to, say everybody knows that Roy Moore used to go after young girls, at least as young as 16. And he was apparently banned from the local mall because he was such a pervert that he'd go in his 30s trying to hit on teenagers. Okay, that's the part that's not illegal, just it is what it is, okay? Then you have the 16-year-old, and the legal age of consent in Alabama is 16. You have a 16-year-old that he took from a restaurant and said, oh, I'll give you a ride home. It was a cold night, her boyfriend was late. And she had seen him all the time. She knew that he was a district attorney. And he had written in her yearbook, and he seemed like a nice guy, and she trusts him because he's the DA. He takes her to the back, it gets her in the car, takes her to the back of the restaurant where there's no light in between the wall and the dumpster, and he rips her shirt open and gropes her, and then tries to force her head down. The next day, she has bruises all up and down her neck. She starts screaming and screaming, tears streaming down her face. But she fights him off, and at the end, he gets frustrated, and he pushes her and he says, you're a child, and I'm the district attorney. No one will ever believe you. Then he opens the door and pushes her out. She remembers him peeling away as she's lying on the floor in the cold concrete, okay? So that's the story she told recently. That's the one that said she's a proud Republican and voted for Trump, and so did her husband. She has multiple witnesses that she told that story to a long time ago, 2 years after the attack, then 4 years ago to her mom, before she got married to her husband. She has all the corroboration, she has the yearbook. He did it, okay? And that was not consensual. He should be arrested for that, okay? Now, then you have the story of the 14-year-old. Same fact pattern, but way worse than Musso. Because there was a real 14-year-old. He goes up to the mom as she's sitting outside the courthouse. Remember, he's a district attorney. He says, oh, you're gonna go into a custody hearing. I don't want her to hear that. I want to spare her the trauma. And he starts to befriend the young 14-year-old girl when he's in his 30s as a district attorney. And he befriends her, he gets her number, says, I'm going to help. He finally gets her in a car. Don't go in a car with Roy Moore. He gets her in a car, and instead of driving her home, drives to his house 30 minutes into the woods. Then he makes her strip down into her underwear. Then he takes off all of his clothes. And then and it's painful to say, but he got her took her hand and made her touch his erect penis, according to the record, okay? Now that guy, and there is no statute of limitations in Alabama on sexual crimes against underage kids. No statute of limitations. So Musso, for trying to meet with a fictional 14-year-old that didn't exist, spent 5 years in prison.
And he's a registered sex offender.
Why is Roy Moore not immediately arrested? We have an incredibly credible witness. We have several witnesses, including the 14-year-old that said he sexually assaulted me. Running for Senate, why is he not in handcuffs? And this is what drives Americans crazy, rightfully so. There are two different sets of laws in this country. One for the rich and powerful and one for the rest of us. You look at a 14-year-old the wrong way anywhere in the country, you're gonna go to prison, okay? Unless you have power, in which case you might become a United States Senator. And the 16-year-old said that she didn't even tell her sister for 2 years because she was so afraid of what that district attorney might be able to do to her and her family. That's power. And he used that power to molest little girls. And now we're having a conversation about whether he should be a United States Senator. The conversation we should be having is how much time should he spend in prison?
One final thing I wanted to add to this was the lack of response on Twitter by our Twitter-loving president, who, by the way, reluctantly supported Luther Strange over Roy Moore during the primary in Alabama, and then was furious when it turned out that he didn't go with his gut to support Roy Moore. And he was very clear about that on Twitter. And this is just speculation, so take it for what it's worth. But I would venture to say that if Roy Moore was a Democrat who might have been critical of Trump, he'd be tweeting about it at 3 in the morning every day for the rest of his term.
Why isn't the Justice Department investigating the sick child molester Democrats? Why aren't they investigating? Why aren't they doing something about this? Did Robert Mueller have something to do with it? No, but it's a Republican you want to win that Senate seat. The sound of silence. The guy all of a sudden can't find a computer to tweet from.
And believe me, he's tweeting plenty, just not about this.
All right, let's take a quick break here. We still have the devastating story, unfortunately, about 2 people. One is John Travolta, and the other is a Democratic senator. And that Democratic senator story is exactly how the rich and powerful win while you're not looking. But we're gonna shine a spotlight on it. Don't miss it.
I'm super excited because we have different levels of members. They pay $10 a month, but there are some members that pay a little more. Our executive producers, for instance. My favorite thing about executive producers is that we have quarterly calls with them. I love that I'm getting a little transparency and I'm knowing what you guys like and dislike. Ideas on how to improve the show, topics that maybe we haven't heard of yet and you really want us to cover. We have so much respect for you because of the fact that you keep us independent and allow us to be uncensored, unfiltered, without worrying about corporate sponsors breathing down our necks and telling us what we can and can't say. So if you want to be a member, obviously no pressure. You can go ahead and join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. I'm gonna ask some uncomfortable questions. The first topic that I said that we would discuss a little more is masturbation.
And then I was swimming in a hazelnut river.
Are you sure you're not doing mushrooms? Oh my God, I can achieve an orgasm by myself.
Fuck that, I am gonna talk about it because there should be no shame around. I think a lot about death because I love life.
That openness led to amazing sex.
And I keep saying to everybody, oh, I gotta go call my wife. I figured that was a good excuse and people can't say, hey, don't call your wife. I'm gonna release bliss.
It's so weird because at that moment I felt bliss and it smelled like lavender.
At the end, you get to go check, nice job. If you're a member of the Young Turks, you too will rock the world.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
It's the Democrats who lull you to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
Most of the people are either unemployed, underemployed, or fucked.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you? Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this with you. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Do not freak out.
Hey, what's up?
Aaron, what do you like better? The rabies or rabies? Go.
Back on the Young Turks. I forgot to check how the Just Democrats are doing in the last segment. Let me take a quick look at that. JustDemocrats.com/2strong. 4 excellent new candidates today. Let's get to $24,000. Get them some real money they can work with, including the guy who almost upset the Republican in Kansas. And it's just please check out that clip. If you're a member, watch the top of the show to see how fantastic our 4 new candidates are. Now up to 32 candidates overall. All right, here's some wonderfully random tweets. Nacho Mama says, Sessions' creepy mom watching over his shoulder was really weird. Hashtag sorry, not sorry.
Actually, a couple of the people in the background caught my attention during the hearing. I actually watched the whole thing this morning. The line of questioning and how much it differed between Democrats and Republicans was amazing. All of a sudden, you had Republicans that want to talk about marijuana legalization.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Anyway.
Okay, Heather Hallman says, I'm listening to Cenk and Anna talk about Hillary Clinton while knitting a pattern called Into the Woods. Hashtag hint, hint. Okay, Unregistered Chicano says, Cenk Uygur, king of obscure references.
100%.
I got references from the 80s, the 90s, pick a decade, any decade. Yeah. Have your own opinion says the entire Sessions hearing boiled down to, I recall that I did everything correctly, but can't recall anything else.
Yeah.
Exactly. And finally, this is my favorite. Dan Steele says, my new girlfriend is a conservative and she sometimes yells at the screen in anger when I'm watching TYT. Keep it up, Cenk. I think she's starting to like you. We win them over a little bit at a time. Hey, new girlfriend, how you doing?
I have deep admiration for people that can date outside of their political ideology.
Yes, actually,
yeah.
And it happens with a lot of conservatives. They have preconceived notions because they watch TV and they think that you're going to be in 2 different camps. Then they start watching the show and then we are actually honest about the corruption on all sides, and they're like, oh, these guys are actually kind of right. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go forward.
All right. Sean Hannity recently engaged in a kerfuffle with one of his sponsors, one of the advertisers on his show, because the advertiser pulled out following some of Hannity's support for Roy Moore, the Senate candidate in Alabama, who has now been alleged by several women of sexual assault when he was in his 30s, and when some of them were minors. Now, Hannity has supported Roy Moore and then later kind of apologized for some of the things that he said. But before doing so, Keurig decided to pull its advertisements from Hannity's show. And then that resulted to a number of Hannity supporters breaking their Keurigs in protest. It was a Keurig boycott, right? Okay, so here's the update to the story. Keurig has now released a statement and they have kind of apologized, but not really. So I'll get to that in just a second. But Hannity recently called on his fans to stop destroying their Keurig coffee machines after the company's CEO apologized for a tweet publicizing the company's decision to pull ads from Hannity's program. So we're gonna show you those videos in just a second, but I wanna clarify what this so-called apology is. Now, to be clear, Keurig has still pulled its ads from Hannity's show. They're just apologetic about the fact that they publicized it on Twitter. And I'm guessing that they're apologetic because it riled Sean Hannity's fans up more than anything.
Yeah, so, look, I get the sponsors are sometimes in a tough spot because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's their perception. Because, I mean, if you don't pull ads from Sean Hannity when he appears to be defending a child molester, and Roy Moore, if you read the details of what he did to the 14-year-old girl and the 16-year-old girl, it is horrific. Well, I mean, then you're going to catch heat from people saying, why are you giving money to a guy defending a child molester? Then they pull the ads and they happen to tweet it publicly like, oh, we're pulling the ads, right? There's a statement saying we're pulling the ads. And then conservatives lose their mind. We love child molesters, why are you doing that? Don't do that. Okay, now to be fair, they're not saying they love child molesters.
They just love a guy who defended a child molester, but okay, fine.
Okay, they happen to love Roy Moore. And if you want to give him all the benefit of the doubt in the world, they're not convinced that Roy Moore is a child molester yet, even though there are credible enough allegations that the almost entire Republican Party at the national level has said that they are not endorsing him anymore, and some have said they won't even seat him if he wins because he's that deeply immoral. So that's not the Democrats, that's the Republicans saying it. But if you're in the group that says, no, I still don't believe all those Republicans, I don't believe anything, okay, maybe it's not that you're defending child molesters, you just think that this is the issue at hand. Anyway, so, but Keurig and all those guys, look, they smashed the things and Hannity had a great time. And that's the heart of this story. Yesterday, as I reported to you, he's like, I love it, go get him. And he sent out tweet after tweet saying, smash him, I'm gonna buy you new coffee machines.
Yeah.
And then today, I'm sure that somebody pulled him in on both his radio show and Fox News and said, hey, Sean, you know we make most of our money from advertisers. If the minute you get upset with an advertiser, you're telling everybody to smash their product, we're not gonna get any new advertisers.
Right, so.
That's what I told you would happen yesterday. And today, that's exactly what happened. So all of a sudden, Hannity in a massive backpedal.
So let's take a look at the first video of him backpedaling.
A very important message tonight. I'll explain. Please stop smashing your Keurig coffee machines. I'm going to explain how this company was totally exploited. They are actually a victim in all of this. I want to once again thank all of you for your support. It blew me away. But for now, please, please stop destroying your coffee machines. As I've been saying, Keurig, they're a victim in this. As of now, today, before this ever happened this weekend, I have 5 Keurig machines, 5 of them. I have never supported a boycott in my life because I know what they're about. They're about censorship. And by the way, I'm not going to start tonight. You fought back. So tonight, now, please, I'm calling for a ceasefire here. I humbly appreciate your support, but I'm asking you to not smash your Keurig. Now, as I said, I own 5 Keurigs. Please stop destroying yours. And by the way, for the people who did, later this week I have a big announcement. I will be giving away 500 coffee makers. Now I'll decide on the brand that I'll be giving away in the coming days based on how things unfold.
Oh, is it gonna be Keurig? Oh, that was so pathetic. I have 5 Keurig coffee makers. Please stop smashing them. Please, please, I love Keurig. Keurig is the best. Oh my God, please keep advertising with me. By the way, Keurig is, again, they did pull out. They just apologized for publicizing it because in the CEO's word, it gave the appearance of taking sides. Yeah, I think that giving the appearance of taking the side against someone who defends a child predator is okay, but nonetheless, whatever, advertisers, finicky bunch.
Okay, listen, put aside the politics for a second.
Five of them.
No, that was just awesome. Because now are you clear on who Sean Hannity works for? Okay, and Mr. Tough Guy, I'm tough, I've got principles, I fight every day. And then an advertiser's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm so sorry, please, I don't want you to break the Keurigs, I want you to caress them. Good Keurig. Okay, I got 5, I can buy 10. I smear Keurig coffee all over me. Who do you work for, Sean? Oh, you work for your advertisers, right? The corporations who buy ads on you. That's okay, just be honest about it. Well, now you don't even have to be honest about it because even if you're a conservative, you saw what happened there. Your tough guy, Sean Hannity, when it touches his pocketbook, not so tough.
I don't know, he had a rude awakening.
Oh!
Oh man, did that joke land?
I think that joke might have landed, yeah. I'm gonna give it to you.
No one reacted.
But that's, no, it was our sidebar yesterday.
Oh, it was, that was what we chose, that's right. That was actually my suggestion.
Well, there you go, okay.
Okay.
Anyways, all right, we gotta take a break?
Yeah, no, we don't have to take a break. I wanna get right to Mark Warner. During the 2016 election, the Democratic Party was accused time and time again of being elitist and not serving the best interests of its constituents and those on the left. And some on the left were incredibly puzzled by those accusations. But Mark Warner and his recent proposal in regard to payday lenders and deregulating them is a perfect example of why it appears some establishment Democrats have no interest in looking out for the best interests of the American people, but rather the best interests of corporations and those who want to do predatory lending. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with payday lenders, they have gotten a lot of flack in recent years over the interest rate that they tack onto these payday loans. And they're short-term loans, but oftentimes what happens is people can't catch up with them. So they keep taking out more. And in some cases, the interest rate that's tacked on can be up to 400%. And so there were efforts by the Consumer Protection Bureau to regulate these types of payday loans so it would cap the interest rate to the same interest rate that is lawful in any given state that this company operates in. Now, let's give you the details on what Mark Warner wants to do. In late July, didn't get much news, but Warner introduced Protecting Consumers' Access to Credit Act of 2017. The legislation would allow payday lenders to ignore state interest rate caps on consumer loans as long as they partnered with a national bank. Now, national banks deal with some regulation, but it's much more laxed when it comes to the issue of interest rates. And so when these predatory lenders, these payday lenders realize that, they realize that, hey, if we can just work with a national bank, well, the national bank can give out that loan initially and then immediately sell it off to us, and they get a commission, we get the money, we get that high interest rate. It was just a scheme.
So it's complicated, but I want to just explain it just a tiny bit more. So if you're just working within the state, they can regulate you and limit you to 36% interest rate, which is what most states do. Now, 36% interest rate is still gigantic, okay? But okay, fine, at least it's capped. But they found a loophole. The loophole was, well, if I'm not giving you the loan, but a national bank from a different state than this one is giving it, then they're not subject to the state law.
That's right.
So technically, the bank is giving you the loan and then converting it, as Anna explained, which allows them to charge interest rates up to 380%. Now, Mark Warner, I don't think that I'm going to give him way too much benefit of the doubt here. I think that he genuinely believes that he is trying to stimulate business, okay? Now, it doesn't hurt that they are stimulating his campaign contributions, right? And that's usually how it works. And they pour in a lot of money to him and to other Democratic senators, but they get themselves to believe, no, especially the Silicon Valley guys, there's a couple of sophisticated new companies that are gonna do this and they need access across the states. But in reality, no, they're using the same loophole to be able to charge 380% interest. So Mark Warner introduces it and paints it as he's protecting your access to credit. No, you've got the access to credit either way. Just under one circumstance, they still charge you a huge interest rate of 36%. In the other one, they're charging you a rate that is so high that it gets you into a cycle of poverty. And to give you a sense of how bad it is, according to Pew, a typical customer keeps on rolling over the paydays because it's such a big fee that they're charged. Look, people don't have a lot of money. You know, the people in Washington and New York, it's unfair to say they think it's a joke. They just are not familiar with it, right? So they can't comprehend it. You know that for about 3/4 of Americans, they could not withstand a $700 blow to their finances.
They're one paycheck away from being in a significant financial problem.
And so for them, borrowing, for example, $375, they wind up having to pay a $55 fee. So if you're rich and you're Washington, New York, you're like, $55 fee, what's the big deal, okay? But that's only for a couple of weeks. That's what winds up being 380%, and they can't pay that back because they keep running after it. So for the typical consumer that does that kind of loan, the fee winds up at the end being $520 when the original loan was only $375. So the loan that they got to pay back, the interest they got to pay back is more than what they originally borrowed. And this is what keeps people in a cycle of poverty. That's why they want to do regulation on this. And instead, he proposes,
wants to do the opposite, and he wants to essentially pull back regulations or deregulate this industry further. And keep in mind that this is something that is likely to pass because one, the media is not on this at all. I want to give Zach Carter at the Huffington Post credit for reporting on this because this was not on anyone's radar. And remember, the first proposal was back in July. It's likely to pass because it has bipartisan support. So there are corporatist Democrats that are in favor of this. Let me give you the details on that. Now, companion legislation is scheduled to a vote in the House Financial Services Committee today, where the bill has the backing of Representatives Greg Meeks, who's a Democrat in New York, and Gwen Moore, who's a Democrat in Wisconsin. They're so-called liberal Democrats with a history of sympathy for the financial industry.
They're not liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
Just because you think gay people should have the same rights as straight people and black people should have the same rights as white people doesn't make you a liberal. Those are guys who consistently sell out to the financial industry.
So Warner's Senate version is also co-sponsored by Tea Party darling Senator Pat Toomey and Senator Gary Peters. So to your earlier point where you're trying to be fair and give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not buying that. He knows who he's working with. And to think, oh, maybe he really is trying to stimulate business and help people out. No. 400% interest rates on payday loans. How does that stimulate? Yeah, it stimulates business for these payday lenders. Certainly doesn't help the American people.
Look, and don't get me wrong, he gets himself to believe those pretty little lies.
Yeah.
So, and the reality is, this is how they rob you in the middle of the night. Because while you're looking at Trump's tweets and the big plans of the Republicans to do X, Y, or Z, all of a sudden we have bipartisanship on an issue where the banks win and you lose. Wow, funny how that happened. One of the other people supporting the bill is arch-conservative Patrick McHenry. So somehow arch-conservatives and Democrats wound up agreeing on a bill where you pay all the money and the national banks and the payday lenders and now some of the new, more quote-unquote sophisticated version of payday lenders in Silicon Valley all get rich.
And look, I think that the big takeaway from this, aside from a really terrible policy proposal, is the fact that you have members of the Democratic Party who don't understand why voters feel like they were abandoned by them. This is why. You think people are stupid? You think people don't know? You think people aren't dealing with terrible economic situations that you aren't addressing properly? That you're actually, taking counterproductive measures against? I mean, come on. And it's pathetic. And they're so defiant about how far removed they are from the actual struggles of average Americans.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not like they didn't know, because the Americans for Financial Reform, the Center for Responsible Lending, Consumer Federation for America, the NAACP, the Southern Poverty Law Center, all wrote letters to all these Democrats saying, don't do it. Don't do it. This entraps people into this cycle of poverty. This is a terrible piece of legislation. And the corporate Democrats looked at it and went, yes, but you're not our donors. And then they go, what? We're liberals. Why are people frustrated with establishment Democrats? This is why. It's a system of corruption. It's built on corruption. Private financing leads to them working for private interests. It's way past time that they work for our public interest. All right, we're out of time here, guys. We do have a little bit more for the online audience, so stay right here. We'll be right back for you guys. For the radio audience, we'll see you tomorrow. on the Young Turks. One quick tweet for you. The Young Feminist says, my favorite part of this story is Cenk's pronunciation of Keurig. Why? What, am I saying it wrong?
Keurig?
What am
it's
I?
Like
I'm saying
cure an egg, I think. Keurig.
Keurig. Okay.
I don't know. Who
it's
cares?
Among the least problematic pronunciations I have.
Yeah, my favorite. The way you say buffet is funny. Oh, there was a celebrity.
You mean buffet?
Yeah, buffet. And then there's a celebrity's name that you always mispronounce, and it's hilarious.
Oh, John Cusack.
Cusack, yeah.
He's an excellent progressive.
Cusack.
Okay.
It's hilarious every time.
And field goal. Anyways, all right, we move forward.
Okay. Radar Online, whoa, sorry. Radar Online has obtained a police report that was written back in February 15th of 2000 against John Travolta. It was written by a 21-year-old masseuse who claimed that he was sexually assaulted by John Travolta. And even though the police report was written, it was never made public, and they managed to get a hold of it and publish it. And so I wanted to share with you the allegations made against Travolta and how this case later played out. Now, the 21-year-old who has not been identified, again, he was 21 at the time of this incident back in 2000, allegedly was groped by John Travolta. He says that his bare buttocks was groped. He was, John Travolta indecently exposed himself and made lewd remarks about gay fantasies. Now, this allegedly took place at the La Quinta Hotel in Palm Springs, California, when Travolta demanded a deep body massage at the facility's spa, which had been opened after midnight for the actor's private use on February 15th, 2000. Now, according to the allegations that, again, were recorded in this police report, during the massage, the star kept removing the towel, exposing his bare buttocks. After a body scrub treatment, he says Travolta told him, quote, he was very attractive and that he had gotten him excited. At that point, Travolta had asked him if he had ever, okay, hold on. Before we get to that, hold on, I gotta fill in some blanks that we didn't make graphics out of. So he told, he told this masseuse allegedly that he was attracted to him and that he was getting excited by that. And then at that point, Travolta allegedly asked him to go into the steam room with him. And they both went in, they were wearing towels. At that point, Travolta took his towel off and told him, do you want me to show you how I like my massages? And then the masseuse said, sure, and he was lying down on his stomach. Travolta allegedly moved his towel and started to massage him in his inner thigh, upper thigh. And then he got uncomfortable, got up and left. And then he said he was taking a shower. Travolta followed him into the shower and asked him if he wanted to have his back soaped up. And he said no, left, got dressed. And then he was supposed to give Travolta some other massage, but he refused to do so, packed up his stuff, and he called the authorities. And that was when this police report was written. Now, other accusations that were detailed in the police report, these are difficult to even read, so I'm warning you guys. Travolta asked him if he had ever had his asshole licked by another man. What would he do if he ever had a sexual encounter with another man? And if so, tell him what he would do so he, Travolta, could have something to fantasize about. These were comments that were made when the masseuse was packing up his stuff after he refused to give Travolta another massage.
Oh, man, I'm not sure there's gonna be any end to these stories. So forever there's been rumors that John Travolta is gay. If you lived in LA, I don't know, almost everybody knows that in LA, but then you tell people that don't live in LA and they're like, what? John Travolta? No way. Next thing you're gonna do is tell me that Tom Cruise is gay. Did I say that out loud? Anyway, okay, so that's, but who cares if he's gay? That's not the issue here, right?
Yeah.
Then the other part of it is, by the way, not masseuse, but masseur.
Is that really, am I saying it wrong? Is it
no, for a guy is a masseur.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that. Super ignorant.
No,
on that.
no.
Yeah.
I didn't know it until I read this story. Anyway, but masseuses and masseurs must have a million of these stories. So now if these start coming out, it'll be one after another, right? How many times is, especially if a person's got any degree of power, it's a guy, gay or straight, right? Getting a massage. I mean, I go to any masseuse or masseur and ask them has this ever happened to you? And I would be shocked if every single one of them didn't say that it has happened at some point. Now, by the way, does that make it right? Absolutely not. But this is the development of society, right? So as people get the message, just because they're a masseuse doesn't mean you get to ask them to do crazy things or touch them or proposition them, etc.
Right, of course. So I just wanted to fill you guys in on what happened with this case. As I mentioned, a police report was filed immediately. The allegations were sexual battery. However, the police did not open an investigation because they believe that there was not enough evidence to prosecute. So that was the decision made. Later, there was a civil suit, 2 separate civil suits against John Travolta by masseurs, and both cases were dropped. In one of the cases, there wasn't evidence that John Travolta was in the same place at the same time, meaning the same city at the same time, or even the same state at the same time. So that's relevant.
That's super relevant.
In the second case, it's unclear why that was dropped, but neither case moved forward.
And guys, so accusations don't mean that it definitely happened, okay? And these are not adjudicated. And it might be that they were not adjudicated because the cops are like, oh, he's got a lot of power, let's let this go, okay? But has that happened before in American history? Only a million times. Or it might be that they were like, look, you don't have enough evidence that there was non-consensual touching within the context of this massage. So that's entirely possible, right? And in the case of Travolta, he is enormously wealthy. So when you have a case where the guy says he touched me inappropriately, but it turns out Travolta wasn't even in that city, that sounds fishy, right? So let's make sure that we're shining a light on things that are going wrong so that we can fix it. And I think that we are doing that now overall. And I think the society is getting to a better place. And guys are being more careful. That's a good thing, okay? At the same time, let's respect people's rights. And I have no idea here if Travolta did anything wrong or not wrong, right? And obviously for you progressives out there, you won't do this, but some will jump to conclusions because it has in their mind a tawdry angle that Travolta's gay and etc. Who cares about that stuff? So, but not every accusation means that the person actually did it. So let's all be as fair as we possibly can as we discuss these cases that are important to society and coming to a new place where actions like this, if they are true, are frowned upon, which is good news overall.
Yes.
Okay, all right, fascinating stuff. We're out of time. We do have a post game for you guys, and you'll get that, and you'll get the whole show ad free, of course, if you join us at tytnetwork.com/join. Before we go, one last check. Because we announced 4 new awesome progressive candidates for Just Democrats today. Please check out the beginning of the show if you didn't, whether it's you watch it on YouTube or you become a member to do it, because some of those stories, including Kaniela Ng in Hawaii, are amazing stories. And let's get those folks some resources that they need. All right, thank you guys. Bye-bye.